Hey, good day, people. Hope everyone is well. I had someone, Doglovich, post a comment on my channel and asked if I would say something about being and what is meant by that. And I thought I would try to weigh in on that real quickly here. I don't want to go into it at length. I guess it would take a many series videos. There's a lot of stuff out there. Just go look at Heidegger's work. I think there are other people you could also look at, but I think Heidegger is really strong there. For the early Heidegger, the question was the meaning of being, and he was asking about the full range of what we mean by the is. When we say that something is, what do we mean by that being? I mean, is it a predicate substance added to the materiality of the world? Is it something objective, the way objects are? Or could it be that there are different meanings to being? And part of the task would be to tease out those, and in particular, to tease out the meaning of that being which is in question, which is us. We are a particular being, and then when we say the being of that being, we're sort of asking what is its way of showing itself? What are the peculiar revealments or concealments, the manifestations that are included in whatever it is and what it's required for it to be as it is? And so, one of the quick and easy distinctions that the early Heidegger makes is between, when you use the word is, we need to be able to distinguish between extant, 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 lives, lives, and then exists, exists, right? Exists. Now, they sort of build upon one another, but the most base level of what we mean by being would be something like an object or an entity which can be defined roughly by its materiality. It's a self-contained set of properties that make this pen what it is. And when I talk about the pen as an object, right, rather than the tool pen, but if I talk about this just as an object, I can weigh it on a scale. I can determine the particular kinds of metals and plastics that make it up. And there are senses in which at the chemistry level, we can, in the level of physics and chemistry, we can delineate all of the properties that make the pen what it quotes is as an object. Now, when we ask about the pen in existence, we'll get to that in a second. But now, when we go to lives, lives would refer to all of those layers on top of the extons, which includes organisms that have, well, organisms, and organisms differ from just what's merely extant because they have biological properties of growth, of respiration, of metabolism, of nutrient gradient experiences, of pressure gradient experiences. I guess experience itself. Living organisms are their experiences. This pen in as an object that's just extant. I can't do it a cruelty by just leaving it here on the table unattended to, or I'm not putting it in a hardship if I put it in a pen case next to some other pens. I'm not like cooping it up. An organism, it naturally opens up to a space around it that it's going to have to ingest, metabolize, relate to. And so, as soon as you get to living organisms, now you're dealing with a form of being that, as it is, it's relating to what other than it is, and it's experiencing those relations. So there's a whole dynamic field of kind of, again, properties of the living. Okay, so, and then from there, you'd want to go on to the issue of existence. Now, It sounds dogmatic and it's difficult to get at, but for Heidegger, only human beings exist. So for Heidegger, this pen doesn't exist. No, the pen is an extant. It's an object, it's a thing that we can hold right in front of us. Existence is a word that is reserved for. Now, well, before I get to this, we can talk about how the pen relates to existence as other than an object. So we'll see if we can get that in a second. But the word existence is reserved for that organism that we are, that Dasein, that being whose being is to be in the world. And when he says that being whose being is to be in the world, he's now referencing a whole new set of relations that we live through, that are existed. Right? That is, we dwell in the kinds of relations that have become open and manifest because of the complexity of the human body, because of historicity and sort of temporal openness. And there are a lot of different ways that Heidegger shakes this out. So part of what makes the human be what the human is that it's subject to existence. And well, what is existence? Well, existence has to do with historicity. It has to do with falling into a cultural background, an entire set of practices, a milieu of intelligibility that you slowly emerge to self-awareness and come to yourself only through that horizon of intelligibility. So take something as simple as your name, whatever your name is, you feel that name to be yours, and it's part of you from the deep down inside. But you didn't begin that way. No, you slowly emerged to a self-awareness that happened through other people, right? Your interactions with others, and then they so entered into the precincts of your inner mind that now your self-relation is already haunted by otherness. The language that you use, you didn't invent it. It's ancient, right? We can go look at etymological dictionaries and we can find word roots, and some of our words we can trace back to in many ancient languages. And so that's one side of what we mean by existence. One whole dimension of it has to do with historicity and thrownness, right? What Heidegger calls thrownness is this sense in which by the time you came to find yourself, you had always already begun. And that's part of this hermeneutic dimension that the humans are in, that they bear history as the mode of their own self-realization. It's not as if there's just history as an object said and done over in the past, and then I'm here relating to it as an extant object in some spatialized time. No, it isn't anything like that. The history is the condition of my self-awareness, and I'm bearing historical consciousness to realize myself as I do. That's part of what we mean to say that we're human and that we're social historical cultures rather than just biological ones. Now, we are biological ones, but our unique biology has been geared up with organs of memory and imagination that facilitate and they release and appropriate certain kinds of pasts and certain kinds of future. And that's, the other dimension is that the human exists, and that's the being of the human, is to exist as a being toward death. So we're openly aware of the fact that we will die one day, and that's part of who we are, and that's what makes decisions so important. Because if you didn't know you were going to die, you could always just do it later. But the awareness of death, it demands a hierarchical prioritizing of what I'm going to do, what I shouldn't do, and how am I going to live my life, right? I can't postpone indefinitely. I think when Heidegger got into his later work, he started to move more toward the meaning of being rather than the truth of being. He talked a lot about language as the house of being, and I think there is a sense in which language as a condition rather than language as an event. So that would be this third element. So when we're talking about the being of the human, you have this historicity, this conditionality. You also have all the ways in which we have a futuralness, an orientation toward our possibilities, what's still outstanding, and ultimately our own death. But in the clearing of the now, there's a sort of ongoing articulation that's happening mainly through language. And I think it wasn't until later stuff where Heidegger's doing a lot of work on what is metaphysics. I would tell people to check that out. But it's there you find a reckoning with the way that non-being it's part of life. Now, arguably, life has to deal with non-being as the condition of its being because it has to deal with things like incompleteness and growth and gradients of food and heat, nutrients, all that kinds of that it's moving toward or against. So it does have some of those dynamics already. But when you get to the human and its ability to talk about what's not the case and to be able to react to events because of what could have happened or might have happened and we thought we were going to but then didn't, the world itself starts to show itself with a thickness of possibilities. And so part of what we mean by the human being, and to say that the human being is to say that the human being is a socio-historical temporal being that has to be its own possibilities. And this is in countless ways. We make 1,000 decisions all day long over what to do, meaning we're entertaining possible things that we could do, but then we don't. We say, well, I could have this meal or that meal, but anytime I'm entertaining those, I'm going to have one of them, but then not all of the other ones. Or a real simple example, if I say, is it 72 degrees out? If it's any degrees other than that, you could say, no, it's not 72. But there's no such thing as not being 72. It would have to be like 54 or 83. It's always a particular temperature. It's a particular register of a fact about the atmosphere. But we can, with language, because language creates a context and language is a whole collection of differential oppositions, it continuously sets that context where nothing occurring can be the meaningful event to which we're relating, and it becomes part of our experiences. This is, again, part of this issue of the pen. The pen, although it is a thing and it can be examined as a thing, it also exists with a different kind of being than just the object being, which would be the tool being. See, this was a sort of interesting work in Heidegger, was to try to get at the way that even something like an extant does carry some of the characteristics of existence once we deal with it in terms of it as a tool. Because once I think of it as a tool, now I can think about how it was part of the condition of literacy, part of the socio-historical condition by which I learned to relate to my own thought in certain ways. I can write things down, carry a message, and then in a different context remind myself of what I wanted to say. So there are lots of ways in which tools and utensils, they're not strictly to be reduced to the being of an extant, but to realize that even an object, it can be incorporated up into Dasein's possibilities for then further enabling other kinds of possibilities then that socio-historical Dasein will have to be. That is, all of us have inherited things like clocks and calendars, and now those are part of our existence. So at any rate, that's what I would say right here quickly on the fly, and I hope everyone is well. Okay, bye-bye.